Two people went to prison. Out of hundreds of documented names in flight logs, court depositions, and FBI files, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were the primary individuals to face criminal prosecution. Everyone else walked away. This is the story of how a single legal document in 2008 protected an entire network, and why the most documented case of elite corruption in modern history ended with almost no one held accountable. The foundation of this protection was built 12 years before Epstein's arrest made global headlines. In June 2008, U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta signed what legal experts now call one of the most controversial plea agreements in federal history. The document did not just grant Jeffrey Epstein immunity from federal charges, it included a clause that protected any potential co-conspirators. With those 4 words, Acosta immunized an entire network. FBI emails released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act show investigators had identified at least 9 alleged co-conspirators by 2019. The emails specifically name billionaire Les Wexner, modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel, and others who were being discussed for federal grand jury summonses. None were ever charged. The emails reveal agents were actively building cases when they received orders to stand down, citing the 2008 immunity agreement. Multiple releases of Epstein files have continued through at least March 2026, with ongoing revelations of additional named co-conspirators. Flight logs from Epstein's aircraft document hundreds of flights between 1995 and 2004, with passenger manifests listing names across dozens of trips according to published reports. The logs include detailed flight routes and dates. Passengers included politicians, business leaders, academics, and celebrities traveling to Epstein's properties in Palm Beach, New York, and Little St. James Island. The logs show some individuals took multiple flights, with several taking more than 10 trips on Epstein's aircraft. Court depositions unsealed in January 2024 reveal the systematic nature of what prosecutors described as a trafficking operation. Virginia Giuffre's testimony describes being transported by Ghislaine Maxwell to have sex with Jean-Luc Brunel at multiple locations, including New York and the Caribbean. The depositions detail how Brunel, who ran a modeling agency, allegedly transported girls as young as 12 to the United States. Brunel was arrested in France on December 16, 2020 on trafficking charges. He was found dead in his Paris jail cell before trial. An FBI interview document describes a woman who accused Trump of assaulting her when she was 13 to 15 years old. The document is part of over 3 million pages released by the Department of Justice following congressional pressure. Perhaps the most disturbing revelation comes from testimony by a security system installer who worked on Epstein's properties. According to court filings, hidden cameras were installed inside Kleenex boxes throughout Epstein's Manhattan mansion and Palm Beach estate. The installer testified that Maxwell personally directed the camera placement, focusing on bedrooms and private meeting areas. When Epstein was arrested in 2019, the FBI claimed they found no significant surveillance equipment. The FBI maintained what they called an organizational chart mapping Epstein's network and timeline of abuse. The chart appears multiple times in the released files with varying levels of redaction. In some versions, entire sections showing network connections are blacked out. In others, victim names and dates are visible, showing a systematic operation spanning decades. The chart suggests investigators understood the scope of the network, but took no action against most individuals identified. Documents show Epstein brainstormed meeting lists in 2013 for someone referred to only as Bill. The lists included celebrities, international political figures, and business leaders. The context suggests these were potential contacts for someone seeking high-level introductions. The lists appear in Epstein's personal notes alongside travel schedules and property management details. Prince Andrew's name appears hundreds of times in the released documents. Private emails show Epstein discussing Andrew's travel arrangements, financial difficulties, and requests for assistance with business deals. In February 2026, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested by British police on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The charges followed the release of emails showing he shared confidential government trade documents with Epstein between 2001 and 2004. Virginia Giuffre's civil deposition describes being sent by Maxwell to have sex with Andrew at Maxwell's London home when Giuffre was 17. She testified that Andrew was aware of her age and that Maxwell had explained she was available for his entertainment. Andrew has denied these allegations, but civil courts found Giuffre's testimony credible enough to proceed with her lawsuit, which Andrew settled for an undisclosed amount. The 2008 non-prosecution agreement reveals how legal immunity can be weaponized to protect networks rather than individuals. The deal required Jeffrey Epstein to plead guilty to state charges in Florida and register as a sex offender. In exchange, federal prosecutors agreed not to pursue charges against Epstein or anyone else connected to his activities. Legal experts argue this was unprecedented because immunity deals typically protect specific individuals in exchange for cooperation, not entire unnamed networks. Alexander Acosta defended the agreement during his confirmation hearings to become labor secretary under Trump. According to reports from the Trump transition period, Acosta indicated he had been told Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence, unquote, and that he should, quote, back off, unquote. The claim has never been officially confirmed. Acosta later resigned as labor secretary when the agreement became public. He has never clarified who gave him those instructions or what intelligence agency claimed Epstein. Documents show the Justice Department continued to invoke the 2008 agreement to block prosecutions as recently as 2023. When prosecutors in New York were building cases against several Epstein associates, Justice Department lawyers argued the immunity clause remained binding. This interpretation meant that anyone who could have been charged in 2008 remained protected 15 years later. Attorney General Pam Bondi was fired in April 2026 following bipartisan criticism over her handling of the Epstein file releases. Congressional representatives revealed that 6 names redacted from the files included 4 men who had no apparent connection to Epstein and who vigorously denied knowing him. Critics argued Bondi was using over-redaction to obscure the real scope of the network while protecting individuals who should face scrutiny. The Maxwell trial revealed testimony about a network that extended far beyond the 2 individuals who were prosecuted. Witnesses described being systematically presented to powerful men at parties, dinners, and private meetings. They testified about being transported between properties specifically to meet certain individuals. Yet none of these men were charged, despite being named in court testimony under oath. Financial records show Epstein moved substantial sums through shell companies and offshore accounts between 2000 and 2019, with investigators tracing tens of millions in documented transactions. The money came from unknown sources and was distributed to foundations, political campaigns, academic institutions, and individuals. Investigators traced payments to universities, think tanks, and research programs, but the FBI has never publicly identified who received Epstein's money or why. The pattern becomes clear when you examine the documents together. Flight logs showing who traveled where. Depositions describing who was present at what events. Financial records showing money flowing to which institutions. FBI charts mapping the connections. Emails discussing arrangements and introductions. Survivor testimony naming specific individuals. The evidence does not suggest a conspiracy. It documents a network operating in plain sight. Congressional investigators now estimate over 400 individuals appear in Epstein-related documents across flight logs, contact lists, financial records, and court filings. Of those 400, fewer than 50 have been publicly named. Of those 50, only 2 faced criminal charges. The rest remain protected by redactions, immunity agreements, and what the Justice Department calls insufficient evidence. The question that emerges from 3 million pages of documentation is not whether Jeffrey Epstein operated alone. The documents prove he did not. The question is why a case with flight logs, financial records, survivor testimony, FBI organizational charts, and recorded communications resulted in prosecutions for only 2 people when the evidence clearly documents a network. If you want to understand how institutional protection operates in practice, subscribe to The Buried Record. What we found in these Epstein files is not unique. It is a pattern that appears in other documented cases where evidence exists, witnesses testify, and investigations stop just short of the names that matter most.